Happy coding.
Hello there, Kevin here, and welcome to our next video in our series on Intro to Web Dev. In this video, we will be talking about HTML and HTML tags and how to use those to create a website. So let's just dive in. So last week, you used website builders, which are usually websites themselves, or sometimes they're an app or like an application that you download and install on your computer. But very generally, they give you a way to like drag and drop and click around to create a website. And those are fine, and they will let you create like a basic website for like kind of cookie cutter kinds of things where you want a website that looks like every other website. And that's fine, but you are sort of limited by whatever the website builder of your choosing lets you do. And often like some of the features that you are most interested in are behind like paid accounts and whatnot. So for folks who don't know how to write HTML, that's their only option. And my goal with this class and with this video specifically is to give you more options. You can always choose to use a website builder in the future, but at least it will be a choice instead of your only thing that you can do. Anyway, that's getting a little too grandiose, but the idea is from here on out, you'll be writing your own code to create your own website from scratch rather than using a website builder. So before we do that, I want to encourage you to take a second to like click around in your favorite website and think about the different kinds of content that that website contains. And so it's things like if I just look at the one I'm looking at now, which is Happy Coding, this is my personal website. I notice a few things right off the bat. First off, I notice that it has a background image, and I notice that it has a header, and in the header is some links. And if I scroll over them, I get like an underline, sort of bright orange styling, and there's like a little icon up there. There's a big, kind of honestly ugly looking picture here. I should probably replace this with a better image. Um, but that's, it is what it is. Then I see like I've got some like rectangular sections with borders, and I see like links on the left here and maybe like a table of contents on the right. Looks like that is kind of sticky and stays on the right side as you scroll. And then in the middle section, the content section itself, I see like again more links. I see like a YouTube video, which is kind of awkward because I'm currently recording the video that will replace this one. So uh, whatever, a little time travel. Um, and I see stuff like headings and kind of regular looking text here. I see a list that has sort of bullets on it. I see more sort of like headings, and looks like this is sort of like I don't know, like a code sort of block where it has like a different font and so on and so forth. Here's an image um, and another code block, and you can kind of click around and see what is sort of on your website. And so just take a minute to do that and kind of reflect on like the different kinds of content that you see. Um, and we will be learning how to create that kind of content throughout. So you can probably connect the dots enough to know that what we are going to learn about is a language called HTML. But before I do that, I want to talk about a kind of general concept called markup. And to explain that, how I like to think about it is, let's forget about computers for a second. Let's forget that we're about to write code. Let's think about a scenario that you have likely been in, where you have like a test or like a paper that you wrote like on physical paper. I don't know if schools do that anymore, but probably you have seen a piece of paper with content on it before, like in school. And let's say you hand that in, like you hand in your content. So maybe that's like your answers to test questions that you wrote out with a pencil, or maybe it's like a paper, like a 10-page paper on a book that you read, that you printed out and then handed in. And your teacher would take that piece of paper from you, look at the content, and then they would get out their like dreaded like red pen. All I have is a blue pen. That's not a good visual aid. I should have prepared a red pen. I'm looking around for one. Anyway, so your teacher gets out their red pen and they start like circling things that you wrote, or maybe underlining, or maybe writing some words in the margins. And what your teacher is doing is marking up your paper. They're marking it up literally with a pen. They're adding marks. And so I don't know, here's an image I found on the internet of a red pen, as if you didn't know what it looked like, but like you see like stuff's being underlined and pointed at. And again, you have likely seen this. And this idea of marking up the content is that your teacher is not adding content themselves. They're not like editing your thing that you handed in and like adding words into the middle of the content. What they are writing is separate from the content. It is markup. And that is a concept that sort of follows through into computer science when we start writing code. So to demonstrate that, or demonstrate what I mean by markup, I'm going to use a specific markup language. And I hate that this is the name of the language because it just makes it confusing, but this is a markup language called Markdown. So yeah, I don't know why they named it that, but they are clever, but makes it really confusing to explain. But you have likely seen Markdown before because it's really popular on like websites and like online like forum type things like Reddit and that kind of thing. And it's where you can write some content. So I want to say like this is some text. Can I make this? Can I move this? No, I can't. Can I just make it the whole thing bigger? Yeah, there we go. I need to zoom out though. So I have on the left some text. It's just boring, you know. I haven't actually added any markup in the language Markdown yet. But let's say I wanted to say this is some bold text. And to communicate to the computer that I want the word bold to be bolded, I'm going to use a markup language called Markdown. And the syntax for Markdown, just like the things that you use to mark it up, are things like asterisks or stars. So if I add 2 stars before bold and 2 stars after, then it gets bolded. And notice like over here in sort of my input that I do have these asterisks, but in the rendered sort of output, those asterisks are not in the like resulting content. And that's because these asterisks are not content themselves. Just like when your teacher was getting out their red pen and circling things, their circles were not part of the content. It was markup. These stars, these asterisks, are themselves markup. And so this communicates, hey, this should be bold. And to know that the asterisks are how you bold things is a matter of knowing Markdown, the language. So I can do other stuff in Markdown. So if I have a hash symbol and I say this is a header, it will render as like this big kind of bold text. And notice again, I added the hash. The hash is not before the text in the content itself because the hash is markup, or Markdown. And just one more I'll do. If you have a asterisks and then text, and then maybe I'll have another 1, 2, and then 3, then it gets rendered as a bulleted list. And again, the asterisks are not in the resulting content because they are markdown, not content. And instead it gets rendered as a bulleted list. So there's a couple of other things that you can do in Markdown, and you have maybe seen those things before, but this class is not about Markdown. I'm only talking about Markdown because this is another markup language that is often folks will see this before they get to like something like HTML. So it's the idea of markup. You are adding stuff sort of around the text to communicate something, in this case to the browser, that it should render things in specific ways. So the reason I'm talking about this particular markup language is that HTML is a markup language. In fact, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. The ML is markup language. Hypertext is just an old word from like, I don't know, the 70s that means a like piece of text that references another text. Specifically, this is generally like links in HTML. So back in the day, the idea of having these files that referenced other files was this like really fancy, cool idea. They called it hypertext, and that name has lived on in HTML. So it's Hypertext Markup Language, a markup language for files that link to each other using hyperlinks. Okay, so that is HTML as a markup language, and I think to talk about it, I'm just going to dive like straight into the code editor. So I want to jump over to NeoCities, and the way I got to it was like I just left it open from the last video where I opened up NeoCities, but I went to neocities.org after registering, and I think if I go like I'll go from the home page, and I can go over here to edit site to get to it. To my dashboard, and then I'm going to click in edit in index.html. I'm going to click this edit button, and that takes me to this editor, and maybe I'll close that tab. Okay, so HTML is a markup language that tells the computer how to render different kinds of content. And so if I just sort of look at what this file contains, let me maybe make the whole thing bigger. Yeah, that works. Sure. Yeah. All right, cool. I'm seeing things like this H1 thingy, and then some text, and then after that text, there's another H1 thingy, and I'm seeing things like a P, and then whatever the heck this stuff is, and another A and another P. Okay. And if I go to view, and I sort of switch back and forth in between the code and the website, I can get a sense of how things connect. So I have welcome to Kevin's amazing website in like H1, and I see that here, welcome to Kevin Workman's amazing website, and I see that this is rendered as a big bold heading, so I can maybe guess that H1 stands for heading, and P, I will just tell you, is a paragraph, and if I see this is a paragraph, here's how you make a link. I see that here, this is a paragraph, here's how you make a link. And then there's a link, and this is another, I'll just call it a thingy for now. This one has a special extra bit here where it's marking up the content to say, hey, when you show NeoCities, show it as an A, which is an anchor, which is just another word for link, and point it to this URL. And so here I have a link, and by default, they're shown as blue. I think since I've visited this homepage before, it shows as purple because I've already been there. But if I click it, it takes me there. So you can kind of just get a sense of how stuff fits together just by kind of looking at it. But by to get like more in the details, I will say that these thingies are called HTML tags. And the way they work is they are sort of in between angle brackets. So it's like a less than symbol and a greater than symbol. And then inside the less than and greater than, you use the name of the tag. And then usually for most tags, you put some text, and then you have what's called a closing HTML tag, which looks a lot like the opening HTML tag, but it has a little slash here. And this is saying when you hit this like closing tag, the heading is over. Like this is no longer a heading. So maybe just to try something out. And this is one of the things I really like about NeoCities is you're kind of encouraged to just try stuff out. So I'm going to actually just delete this heading. And I don't actually know what will happen. And I'm going to save this. My file has been saved, and I'm going to refresh over here. And let's see what happens. Refresh. And yeah, now everything is a heading because in my code, I have my opening H1 tag. And at the end of the H1, I keep going. And now I have a P and all kinds of other stuff down there, but it's all sort of inside the heading because I didn't close it. And this is a really common thing to happen when you're writing HTML. So I'm going to add it back in by zooming in and saying, typing my less than character and then a slash and then an H and then a 1 and then a greater than symbol or an angle bracket. And if I zoom out again, that's the only thing I'm going to change. I'm going to hit save here and I'm going to refresh. And ta-da, I fixed it. So that is sort of playing with the default HTML, but I can also add new tags. And so let's see, what I might do is, I don't know, I might just delete everything. I'm debating, maybe, sure, I'll delete it. And to create sort of from scratch an HTML tag, which is like a really common thing as you're writing, you're not always going to have like starter code, especially you're not going to have starter code that already uses the tags that you want. So you'll likely be adding stuff. So I am going to maybe recreate a new H tag. So I'm going to say the less than symbol or the like opening angle bracket. And I'm going to say H1 and then the closing angle bracket. And then I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe I'm going to pretend to build a website. Actually, no, I won't. I was going to say I'm going to build a website about bees, but I'm going to do that in the next video, actually. For now, I'll just use placeholder stuff. And so I'll say something like, welcome to my site about, I don't know, animals. And I'm going to hit exclamation point, maybe. And then I want to close my H1 tag. So I'm going to have a less than symbol or an opening angle bracket, and then a slash. You want the slash that sort of leans to the right, and then H, and then 1, and then the greater than symbol or the closing angle bracket. And I'm sort of just zooming out to kind of eyeball it and say like, all right, I've got my opening tag, my text, and my closing tag. So I'm going to save this. And I really recommend like writing like one line of code at a time, saving it and then refreshing to make sure that it's doing what you expect. So I'm going to refresh and sure, there it is. There's my change. And again, like maybe just to drive the point home a little bit, like this H and this 1, they aren't showing up in the website because it's not content, it's markup. And so I can keep going. Maybe I'll add a paragraph like, sorry, I'm doing that too fast. I'm going to add a paragraph and I'll do that with a less than symbol and then a P and then a greater than symbol, or these are technically called angle brackets when you're writing them in code. I'm not going to be super picky about that, but the important part is that this is an HTML tag. That's the part I would like you to remember because that will come in handy. And I'll say something like, I don't know, here's a list of my favorite animals. And then I will close it out with a closing P tag, which is the angle bracket, the slash, and the P, and then another angle bracket. And yeah, sure, zoom out. And then I will save that whole thing and refresh over here. And okay, now I see my text up there. Here's a list of my favorite animals. I haven't actually added a list yet, but that's okay. That's what I'm going to do in a second. Okay, so I have my p tag, and from here, I've used a couple of tags that were like in the starting code, and that's, okay, but I don't expect you to always have starter code to start from. And I don't expect you to memorize a bunch of HTML tags. So instead, what I would like to, I don't know, teach you is not memorizing a bunch of HTML tags. Instead, it's how do you find new HTML tags, or how do you find the HTML tag that you want? So I want a list. I want a bulleted list. And technically, I think the starter code did have a bulleted list, but I deleted it and I don't remember how to do it, let's say. I'm going to go to a search engine. You can use, whatever search engine you want, Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing. And I'm going to type in like HTML, and I'll say like bulleted list tag, and I'll hit enter. And there will be a bunch of results. I guess AI now is everywhere, and so you'll have stuff here that you can look at. That's fine. But some of the best websites that I'll direct you to are W3 Schools and Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN, which is not in here for some reason. So that's fine. I'll just go to W3 Schools, and here it is. This is a great website for finding like HTML tags and whatnot. And there's a bunch of stuff here on the left that you can click around in. But here is a page on bulleted lists. So one of the reasons I like W3 Schools is it has this handy try it yourself button. So if I click that, I am now in the W3 Schools editor, which is just a different code editor, and I can kind of play around, and I can say, for the content it gives me, can I zoom in? Yeah. I can change that around. So like, I don't know, I'll change this to like, here are some animals. And if I hit run, it's over here. I don't have to like go to another page. And I'll say like, I don't know, cats, dogs, and lizards. So I can sort of play around over here and find something that kind of makes sense to me. And then honestly, what I do is I copy and paste it. So I want to copy that back to NeoCities, and there we go. Now I will say, let's see, if I save this, does it automatically format? No, okay. So when I pasted it in, it's kind of this like weirdly formatted thing because I just pasted it in from somewhere else. So I'm not going to require this or anything, but it's so much easier to like mess with code if you add like spaces and indentations. So I'm going to indent it like this. And what that is sort of communicating is that this is what I would call a nested HTML tag, which is a HTML tag inside of the content of another HTML tag. So in this case, it's a UL tag, which stands for unordered list. And then inside of the unordered list tag, the content are 3 li tags, and li stands for list item. And so this idea of nesting HTML tags will become more and more important as we go through and learn things about like CSS and JavaScript and stuff. But for now, just know that you can put an HTML tag inside another HTML tag. And I'll show you another example of that in a second. Okay, but now that I have that, I can save and refresh. And I think save and refresh is going to be probably the thing I say the most in this class. But I'll refresh over here. And there we go. Now I have a list of my favorite animals, cats, dogs, lizards. And it's because I have modified this HTML to have this list. I can also add new things. So maybe I want, I don't know, bees to be in there. So I'll add another li, and this is an opening HTML tag. So I'm going to have my angle bracket, the name of the tag, and then bees, and then a closing tag, which is the same thing, just with a slash in it. So yeah, there we go. And I'm going to save that and refresh, save and refresh. And there we go. We have bees. Okay, so where am I? Yeah, I think that's kind of where I want to end. And what I will, again, sort of just, I don't know, remind you of is I don't expect you to memorize a ton of HTML tags. In fact, I don't expect you to memorize any HTML tags. Instead, it's the process of finding new HTML tags and then trying something out and seeing if it works. So let's say I wanted to link to another page, for example. What I would do is I would just go to a search engine and I would say something like HTML, I don't know, link to other page. And sure, I get some AI stuff up here. I see W3 schools here. I'm kind of wondering why I'm not seeing MDN at all. So maybe I'll say like HTML link to other page MDN. MDN is like a really great resource. And yeah, creating links, MDN web docs. Here we go. And this is like, I don't know, a really high quality website, I think by the same people who make Firefox at Mozilla Developers Network. And here it is. Here's the syntax for creating a link. And it's a little kind of wonky because it has this extra bit, which is called an attribute. So this attribute is itself markdown, and it's sort of like inside the tag itself, like not inside the content of the tag, but inside the tag itself. And then you have the content, which is like the link text. And so I'm just going to kind of copy that in. So maybe I will go back to my editor and then I'll add like a p tag maybe. So here, down here, I will say like a p, opening p tag. And then often what I will do when I'm writing HTML is I'll immediately write my closing tag and then I'll sort of go back and edit the content. Another thing you can do is add white space. That's another thing you can do to sort of format it and make it a little easier to read. So I will say something like click here, and I'm going to just paste that whole thing in, and I'm going to change a couple things in a second to learn more about, I don't know, snails. And then I'm going to, yeah, that's it, because I already have my p tag. So here in the a tag, I have this, like these quotation marks, and then inside of that is a URL. So I'm going to go, I don't know, what do I say, snails? So I don't know, I'm going to find a website about snails real quick. Snail, Wikipedia, sure. And in my editor, I'm going to just paste that in, and in here, I'll type here. So now what I have is a p tag right here and some text, which says click, and then a tag, which is an anchor, which has a URL of the Wikipedia page for snail, and then the text of here, and then the rest of the p tag to learn more about snails. And then here's my closing p tag. So if I save that and then refresh over here, then there we go. I have click here to learn more about snails. And if I click there, indeed, I go back to my my snail site on Wikipedia. Okay, so that is sort of the process. I think maybe I'll show you one more HTML tag because it's kind of another wonky one. But after that, I'll just kind of leave it at that. So what I want to talk about is uploading images. So to use an image, there's a few ways to do it, but I think what I'll do is just I'll demo what I would call like the easiest way. There are other ways, but for now I will show you like one way to do it. So I'm going back to my dashboard. Here I am where I see all of my files, and I'm going to upload a file, and I'm going to pick an image. So I have my bees over here, and sure, let's go with this cute one drinking some honey. So I'm going to hit open, and now it is there. Maybe I'll rename it actually when I copied these photos from my phone, and my phone always gives it like these kind of weird long names. So maybe I'll just rename it to b.jpg, and I'll hit rename. And okay, so I've got b.jpg in my file directory here. And so now that I have that, I'm going to remember its name, b.jpg, and I'm going to go back to my index file, and I'm going to hit edit. And again, multiple ways to do this, but I could search for HTML image tags. So HTML image tags. And yeah, so here's MDN, here's W3 School, here's MDN. And you know, they're both fine. So I'll click MDN, I guess. And what I'm looking for is something like this. Yeah. Here's HTML for an image, and I'm just going to copy this whole thing. And I'm going to go back to my editor, and maybe I'll just put an image down here, and I'm going to paste that in. So it's down there. Let me see. Let me zoom in. So the tag is img for image, and then there's a source, which is a file name. So I think mine was b.jpg. And then there's an alt, which is technically not like needed, so you can just delete this if you want to. It's generally considered like a good idea to keep the alt text, and so in this case I'll say like a bee drinking honey, and this is because if for some reason there's a problem loading the image, then it will show that text instead. And for people who have like visibility issues, so like blindness, they can't see your image, and they use tools like screen readers to read out the text on a website. And when the screen reader gets to an image, it reads out whatever's in here. There's some changes to that lately with AI stuff, like describing the image, but sort of this is the fallback. So it's a good idea to include it. But anyway, I have image, source, and then B. And I've honestly never done this in NeoCities, so we're going to see if that actually works, or if I need a slash. So we're going to hit save, and I'm going to go over here and refresh. And there we go. There's my cute little bee. So that was uploading images, and that's a really common thing that folks ask about, so I wanted to include that specifically. It's also kind of weird because this is what's called a self-closing tag, because images don't have content. I think they might have used this as the content. Maybe that would have been like an easier way to do things, but back when they invented that tag, that's not what they chose. So anyway, image is a little weird because it has this wonky syntax, which is a self-closing tag, which means image is like by itself. It doesn't have a closing image tag because it has this, because everything you need to know to render this image is in the opening tag itself. Okay, so that's where I'm going to end this, I think. And again, like importantly, I don't expect you to memorize any HTML tags. Instead, what I hope you have learned is just sort of the general idea of HTML, that there are these tags that are markdown that tell your browser how to render the content, and then closing tags. And you know, there's a couple different things, how you can nest tags, and you have these self-closing tags, but that's the general concept of HTML. And most importantly, you can look up new tags. So there's a few places to do that. Maybe the obvious place is the tutorial that I posted. So this is sort of a list of the tags that I think are like most often used. But it's not a list of every tag by any means. There's many other tags. So Yeah, MDN and W3 schools are sort of the best of the best. So if I go to, I don't know, I'll just say like HTML tags in my search engine, and yeah, I've got HTML reference here. I have HTML tags A to Z. Oh, it's Geeks for Geeks. I generally don't click them because uh, it's fine. They just usually have a bunch of annoying ads. Not that W3 Schools doesn't, but anyway, here's just a big old list of maybe every single HTML tag, at least for now. You know, HTML is constantly changing, but here's like at least a snapshot of some of the tags you can use. So click around and find tags that seem interesting, and play around. So I don't know. Now I'm stuck like scrolling. Like maybe I want to find one. Um, so I don't even know what progress does. I've never seen this tag before. What's it look like? Oh, wow. I have never seen the progress tag before. Huh. Interesting. I always did this with JavaScript, but interesting. I did not know this was a thing. Cool. So that's a progress tag that I've never seen before. Interesting. But the thing I just demoed is what I am sort of encouraging you to do, which is click around, read through anything that looks interesting, like small. I can kind of guess what that does, but you can look at it. Maybe sub does something interesting. You can create tables and things like that. So yeah, that's what I encourage you to do is as you're building out your website, don't be afraid to look up new tags, or if you're trying to do something specific, type in like HTML and then the thing you're trying to do. I will say that we have focused on HTML here, and default HTML is kind of, I don't know, boring and not that like interesting to look at. So it's like black text on a white background and uses some default fonts. And we will learn about styling the content next week. But for now, you're kind of stuck with the boring default styles. But the idea is to practice with HTML tags before we add other ideas to it. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. And now you know how to write HTML. So now I can officially say to you, until next time, happy coding.